Video 1 for IB Biology. We are looking at cellular biology and we are looking at the foundations. Okay, so we're looking at the first section of your study guide, and so section 1.1, which is the introduction to cells. In your study guide, these are the tables that you'll find, and in this video we're going to be looking at some of the understandings. We'll be looking at part of the nature of science, and we will also be looking at some of the applications and skills. Okay, so starting off, in your prior education in various year levels, you would have looked at cells. Back in year 8, you may have even built a cell, okay, and you would have looked at the basic components or organelles that are found within cells, and you'd probably have a kind of understanding on what some of those different organelles do. So you've kind of got a base knowledge. We're going to refresh over that during this unit and build on it. Okay, so first of all, back in year 7, you would have looked at the characteristics of life, and you probably would have looked through the eyes of Mr. N. Grew or Mrs. Gren. And it's they're basic acronyms to look at the characteristics of life in quite a simplified way. Now we're moving on and we look at things a little bit more technically, okay? So our characteristics of life, we still have 7 of them. Okay, so all living things require nutrition to provide them with energy and the substances they require to grow. All living organisms metabolize substances, okay, so they have chemical reactions occurring within their cells to release energy and for other reasons. All living organisms grow, so they have a starting point of single cell and then grow to their mature size, and this is not reversible. Okay, all living organisms have an ability to respond to the environment around them. All living organisms excrete waste product. Now this waste product through excretion is from their metabolism. Okay, it's not from digestion, it's from their metabolism. All living organisms keep their internal and external environment constant through the process of homeostasis, depending on the changes of external environments or internal environments. So homeostasis is a characteristic of life, and all living organisms reproduce, whether it's sexually or asexually. All right, so cells. So all living organisms are made of cells. We have looked really briefly at those characteristics of life. So whether we've got a single-celled organism or a multicellular organism, they carry out those characteristics of life. Now, over the years, cellular biology has been studied by a multitude of people to get to the current understandings and theories that we have today. And who knows, these theories could be proven wrong in the future, and you are the future of biology. Okay, so there's exciting things to come, and through this course we teach you the theories as they are today. So when we think about cell theory, okay, we have 3 key points that we're thinking about, right? All living organisms are composed of cells, whether it's unicellular, so a single cellular organism, to multicellular. They're all composed of cells. Cells are the smallest units of life, okay, so without cells, there is no life. And a single cell is capable of carrying out a range of processes for life. Now, cells come from pre-existing cells. They don't just spontaneously generate. Genetically, they come from a parent cell. And just thinking back to our previous years of study, knowing the hierarchy of cellular matter. So you start with your cell, and then a group of cells together is known as a tissue. A group of tissues together form an organ. A group of organs together form the organ system, and then a group of organ systems together form the organism. So every cell is surrounded by a membrane. Okay, and this separates the cell contents from the outside environment. Every cell contains some form of genetic material which stores all the instructions needed for cellular activity. And then all cells produce their own energy, okay? And this is done by chemical reactions within the cell releasing that energy. Many of these are catalyzed by what we know as enzymes. Now, just remembering, as I said just now, this is where our current studies on cells say that we are. This is what the current theories are pointing us towards. However, these theories in time could be proven to be incorrect. All right, now we've got various different cell types. Here we've got a picture of our prokaryote cells and our eukaryotic cells. Now, eukaryotic are generally more complex with more organelles within them. They do share organelle types. Okay, so we're now going to look at one of our application sections of our study guide in 1.1. And here we're looking at investigations of functions of life in Paramecium and one named photosynthetic unicellular organisms. So we're looking at two unicellular organisms here, and we'll start off looking at our Paramecium. So here we have our unicellular organism, our Paramecium. So it's one of your application sections, applications and skills. Okay, now we're going to look a bit further into our Paramecium and where it's found in a moment, but you can see all of its different organelles here. And these are quite different to some of the organelles you've seen on your traditional cells that you would have looked at in past years. Okay, we will look further into the role of each of these organelles and structures. Some of them, though, to you will be quite similar and you'd know about, like the cytoplasm. You've got cilia, which I'm sure you've heard of, the small hairs around the cells. You've got vacuole, which you would have heard of in plant cells. You've got two different kinds of nucleuses, but I'm sure you would be able to tell the difference between what that means, a macro and a micro. So we will look at this further in class, but it's important to know the different organelles that we've got here. And as we move on, we're going to watch a video now on our Paramecium feeding. So you've got its cytostome there where it's actually taking in food. Okay, if we have a look now at this link, so we can see it's telling us what our Paramecium is. Okay, we can see that it lives in aquatic habitats. Okay, and they've been around for a long time, as you can see. Okay, we've got our structure of our Paramecium, and then we've got our scientific classification. So you can see that it is a eukaryotic single-celled organism, and you know that through the complexity of it. We've got some information about its size. Now, we've got some information about its anatomy here, and it is important for you to have a background knowledge of their anatomy and what their different parts do. We will look at these further in class, but just taking a few notes about all their organelle would be very useful. Again, as we said, those two nuclei. Two different types of vacuole. got information about how it moves, how it digests its food, and then about how they reproduce, so both asexually and sexually. And why they are important to us as humans, and then why they're important in the environment. And then some other questions and answers there. You can go to that website yourself, or you can just pause this video as you're watching it. Okay, so the other unicellular organism that we're going to focus on, if you remember rightly in the application section, it does say that it's a photosynthetic organism. Okay, so now with our Paramecium, that actually ingested food. We watched a video of it eating. We watched it ingesting its food. Now, with our Chlamydomonas, these are photosynthetic, so they actually make their own food. They'll have some kind of chloroplast in them where, yeah, they photosynthesize. And here we've got our Chlamydomonas under microscope. And you can clearly see that photosynthetic material in them, the greenness. Okay, so if we follow this link, again, I'll share this with you. Remember to pause as you're going through for any information that you would like. So we've got the occurrence of them and where they're found. Again, we're finding that they're found in water. So they're a motile freshwater algae. Got some information about the structure. And again, some parts there you'll see that you'll quite understand, other parts would be new for you. And there we talk about the structure of them. So they have a cell wall. They have a cytoplasm. They have their flagella. And they've got their neuromotor apparatus, which is something new. They've got chloroplasts. Again, some of this information will be quite high level because we've not got to it yet, but it's just giving you an insight to the structure of our Chlamydomonas. Tells you a bit about their reproduction. This is a bit high level still, but it's just giving you that introduction to them. So again, they reproduce both asexually and sexually. You don't need to copy all of this word for word, it's just to get that brief understanding of what we're looking at. And to know where you can refer to for more information. Got their life cycle there. Okay, so part of your study is to look at the nature of science through the lens of biology. And one of the parts of Unit 1.1 is looking for trends and discrepancies. Okay, so when we're thinking about cells and we're thinking of trends and discrepancies, so these are similarities and things that are different. We always have something that doesn't stick to the rules, and in this case we've got some cells that don't conform to our cell theory. And in this case we say these cells are atypical. So you have typical cells that stick to the cell theory, and you've got atypical which do not. Okay, now part of your course you need to focus on some certain atypical cells. Okay, and they are your striated skeletal muscle cells, your aseptate fungi, and some giant algae. So we'll look closely at these now. So with your striated skeletal muscle cells, these are surrounded by a cell membrane. So tick, that says it's a cell. Yep. They form from pre-existing cells. Yep, tick. They have their own genetic material. Yep, tick. And they release their own energy. So in that respect, they are a typical cell. What makes them atypical is they are much larger and longer than most animal cells, and they have more than one nucleus. Sometimes they have several hundred nuclei. Okay, so that's what makes them atypical. All right, our aseptate fungi. All right, so these consist of thread-like structures called hyphae. Okay, now these have a cell membrane and a cell wall. Some types of fungi have hyphae that divide up into small cell-like sections. So if you look at the picture here, you've got your small, in A, you've got your small cell-like sections, whereas in B, there are no cell-like sections. So these are called septa. In our aseptate fungi, so this is the one we're focusing on, there are no septa. Okay, so this B is the one that we're looking at without the septa, where the nuclei are spread just throughout the one mass of cytoplasm. Okay, then our giant algae. Why is this unique? Why is this atypical? Well, algae photosynthesize. Okay, they're autotrophs. They store their genes in a nucleus like plant cells do, but they're much simpler than plants in structure. Plant cells are quite complicated. Okay, now most algae are generally microscopic and generally unicellular. Okay, so one cell. Now with our giant algae, they are still unicellular. Okay, however, they grow much, much larger than a normal algae cell. Okay, and this giving you the idea of the size. Okay, so it is actually quite large for a single cell. Okay, so they're our main atypical cells that you need to look at as part of your IB course, but just having an understanding of other atypical cells, and in the past you might have called them specialized cells. Okay, so you've got your red blood cell. Now our mature red blood cell has no nucleus. Okay, and that's to make more room for the hemoglobin. All right, water cells in our plants. Okay, so the xylem in the water cell in the plant, that allows water to move through. And again, these xylem, they've lost their cell wall. Food transport cells in the phloem of plants, they've lost their nucleus so that they can allow more food to transport through. And the epidermal cells in mammals, so the cells on the surface of the skin, they've lost their cytoplasm and their nucleus because there's no need for them. So here are just these are four other types of cells, the red blood cell being my focus there, but four other types of cells that are atypical. Okay, so looking back at your introduction to cell section, we've covered two areas from your understandings, one from your nature of science and a couple from your applications and skills. See you in the next video.